Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Gold Rush Rick Ness makes big sacrifice to chase gold dreams. Gold Rush fans were disappointed last season when Rick Ness didn't return to the show. However, Ness was dealing with some mental health issues. He appeared in one episode and explained what was going on to his crew. It sounds like Rick is trying to move on and is back this season. Here is a look at the sacrifice Rick had to make to return to Gold Rush this season. Rick Ness returning to Gold Rush this season. Rick Ness is back on Gold Rush this season after sitting out last season. He did actually appear in one episode last season when his crew showed up at his home to ask him what he was doing. Rick explained he suffered from seasonal affective disorder, which is a form of depression. This affects people based on the changing of seasons. It affects people at a specific time every year and is usually dependent on people whose jobs are during specific seasons. However, Rick also had another problem he was dealing with. He was seeing therapists and realized he hadn't been to his mother's home since her death the previous year. Rick owned her home since her death, but he said he hadn't stepped foot in it since she died and realized that this was part of the personal trauma that he struggled with. He admitted the depression arrived after his mom died, and he had not reconciled the death yet 1 year later. This season, Rick returns to Gold Rush and he has dealt with part of the trauma. Rick sold his mother's home to finance his return to mining this season. That was one of the things I had to come to terms with, Rick said, via TV Insider. He said that he kept putting it off, and that was the wrong thing to do. I walked through that door, packed her house up, and took what I wanted to remember my mom by. Then I had to sell the house to ultimately fund my comeback here. What to expect on new season of Gold Rush? Rick Ness said that he has his memories, but a house is a house. Now, that house has allowed him to return to mining, which is his true journey. He said he built a new team from scratch. He said this was important because he trusted too easily in the past. This season should see Rick working with a new set of miners. Rick also said that he wants to send a message to fans this season on Gold Rush. He wants to make sure that he lets people know it is not embarrassing to ask for help if someone is dealing with mental health issues. There should be no stigma attached. This is what happened to me. I wasn't going to hide from it. Rick said, I think if other people see that, maybe it will help them too. In the vast, rugged expanse of Alaska, where the mountains stand tall like ancient guardians and the rivers rush with untamed fury, there's a breed of men who are cut from a different cloth. These are the gold seekers, the dreamers, the ones who brave the harsh wilderness in pursuit of fortune. And among them, there's one name that resonates louder than most, Gold Rush Rick Ness. Rick Ness was no stranger to hard work. Growing up in the heart of the American Midwest, he learned the value of sweat and toil from an early age. But it wasn't until he stumbled upon a TV show called Gold Rush that his life took a drastic turn. The allure of striking it rich in the unforgiving wilds of Alaska ignited a fire within him, a fire that would consume his every waking thought. With determination burning in his soul, Rick made the life-altering decision to leave behind the comforts of home and embark on a journey that would test his resolve like never before. Armed with little more than a dream and a willingness to endure whatever hardships came his way, he set out for the last frontier. The reality of life in the Alaskan wilderness hit Rick like a freight train. The bitter cold, the isolation, the relentless struggle against nature, it was a far cry from the romanticized image he had envisioned, but Rick was not one to be deterred so easily. With grit and perseverance, he threw himself into the unforgiving landscape, determined to carve out his own piece of the Alaskan dream. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months as Rick toiled tirelessly in search of the elusive yellow metal. There were moments of despair, moments when it seemed like all hope was lost. But Rick refused to surrender to defeat. He drew strength from the land itself, from the towering peaks and the rushing rivers that whispered tales of untold riches hidden just beneath the surface. And then, just when it seemed like luck was finally on his side, tragedy struck. A devastating storm ravaged Rick's camp, destroying everything in its path. For a lesser man, it would have been the final nail in the coffin, the end of the road. But Rick was made of sterner stuff. With steely determination, he picked himself up from the wreckage and vowed to rebuild, to persevere against all odds. But as Rick poured his heart and soul into his quest for gold, he began to realize that there were sacrifices to be made along the way. Time slipped through his fingers like grains of sand, moments with loved ones lost to the relentless pursuit of fortune. And then there was the toll it took on his own well-being, the physical and emotional strain of living on the edge of existence. Yet still, Rick pressed on, driven by an insatiable hunger that burned deep within his chest. He knew that the road to riches was fraught with peril, that the odds were stacked against him. But he also knew that fortune favored the bold, that those who dared to dream were the ones who shaped their own destiny. And so, with the spirit of a true pioneer coursing through his veins, Rick Ness continued to chase his gold dreams. For him, the journey was far from over. There were still mountains to climb, rivers to cross, and veins of gold waiting to be discovered. And though the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, one thing was certain: Rick Ness would never stop until he had chased down his dreams and claimed his rightful place among the legends of the Alaskan frontier.